Hello, my name is Sarah Gable, and I'm a Kansas State University student, and I will be graduating in May of 2020. Today we are going to be looking at making music with fractions, and this is um, a good lesson for grades 2 through 4th grade, and I would use this lesson as an opening beginner lessons to be able to build on to fractions, to be able to build arrays and use those different models as you can see in the standards, but this just gives a good foundation to be able to build onto this lesson and have, just a good understanding. So for my lesson, I'm going to go ahead and kind of describe my activity, which I will go ahead and we'll see this at the end as well. We are going to be having, our fraction pieces that will make up our fraction sequence, and each of those pieces will represent, a note, a half note, 1/8 of a note, and so on. And we're going to go ahead and look at that, but it kind of helps to be able to understand our activity to go along through this. So our musical standard is understanding and evaluating how art conveys a meaning. So we're going to find a meaning with this lesson, and that connection is using fractions in music to be able to put more to just a fraction than just a number. That just, for some younger students, just doesn't make any sense. We want to find our purpose and to be able to make those connections. And students are going to have to use their prior knowledge of music, which we will cover, to be able to understand our pattern and our rhythm and to be able to use that to fractions. And it's a great lesson because, music, you have all of those notes, and it helps students to understand those notes can represent fractions and how you can build off of that. So students are going to be, making a lot of those interpretations. And lastly, we will be evaluating this lesson. So our content objectives are students will be able to recognize fractions and be able to understand the representation behind the numerical value, and students will be able to use notes to demonstrate their understanding of fraction patterns. So, as I've kind of stated before, what our connection is, we want to be able to make math fun. Students, even younger students, I remember one of my teachers opening up with fractions are very hard and not very many people like fractions, and it just gave me a really awful disposition of how I'm going to see fractions in the future. And I still remember it to this day because I still see fractions and I still cringe, and it is still hard for me to, understand those representations and how you can break down fractions and, simplify them and so on and so forth. So this just makes it fun, and to be able to, with being able to rearrange those patterns, like I said, you're going to be able to make those sequences and understand how to simplify them. And this is just a great lesson just to be able to start off with. So our sample activity, as I've kind of already stated, our step one would be you as the teacher, you would have 3 different colors and possibly shapes to represent half notes, quarter notes, and eighth notes. And so you'd give each of your students these little baggies. And students will need to understand pattern and rhythm to be able to fulfill this assignment. So they would need to know, the beat of a half note, or what would represent a half note or a quarter note or an eighth note. And you as the teacher would go ahead and line your blocks up to a certain pattern and develop your rhythm. So if that's, ta, ta, ti, ti, ta, or you could have a drum and let them, hit their drum like, hopefully you could hear that. And, allow them to be comfortable, rather they're singing or rather they're in movement with their instrument, to be able to understand those. And you need to start off with an easy pattern and explain, what all of those notes are and how, you're going to build those patterns off of it and what those fractions mean. It's really important to go ahead and make those connections and show how you can break it down. And then I think that it would be really fun for the teacher to call out the certain fraction pattern and, go ahead and teach them that pattern, and then maybe show them that song, a very simple song, on the internet and how they figured that out, and then get them to kind of look at their fractions and be able to explain, if their fraction shows 1/4 or so on. And then step 3 would be group work, and allow your students to create their sequence and to show the classroom. And that would be kind of your assessment, but I also have another assessment that I, would possibly do. And the other assessment, so we see our group project displays, and I've just outlined that. And then the last one would be call it out, and the teacher could call out a sequence, and the students would go ahead and they could either separate in groups and think about it, or the teacher could, call and fire and allow, pick a group to go ahead and, show their clapping pattern that would be created with their blocks.